Before we jump into today's episode, I want to reach out to you if you've been drowning trying to help your child with anxiety or OCD. If you feel like no one gets your struggles and you would love to have access to evidence-based home approaches to help your child, teen, or young adult, you'll definitely want to hear this. The AT parenting community is open just until this Thursday at 9 p.m. Pacific, that's midnight Eastern. And inside the community, we're going to offer you a group of compassionate, helpful, and caring parents, as well as evidence-based, clinically sound approaches to help your kids, teens, and young adults. You get access to over $500 worth of courses. You have weekly live Zoom classes in the community, monthly support group calls, not just for you. We have one for kids and we have one for teens. And plus, you are able to message me directly and other members in our app, our member exclusive app, to get guidance and support. Join us at atparentingcommunity.com. Just remember that doors close this Thursday, November 20th at 9 p.m. Pacific. Okay, now back to today's episode.
Welcome to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast, where you get help and guidance through the chaos of parenting a child with anxiety or OCD. This show is for educational purposes and is not intended to replace the guidance of a qualified professional. Here's your host, child therapist, Natasha Daniels.
Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. Today, we're going to get into what you can and what you cannot do to help your child when they have OCD. And I see this happening in two different ways. I see parents who are trying to do something or control something that they have no control or ability to change. And so they're spinning their wheels, exhausting themselves when really they can't do it. Or they put their hands up and they say, my child doesn't want to work on this. And so there's nothing I can do until they're willing to go into therapy or use their skills. And there is a lot that we can do as parents, regardless of whether our kids are able to work on their OCD in that moment or in that year or in that chapter. So I'm going to talk to you about what you objectively can and can't do to help your child with OCD. But before we jump into that, I do want to thank NoCD for sponsoring this episode. NoCD offers affordable, effective, convenient therapy, and they're available in the U.S. and outside the U.S. You can schedule your free 15-minute consultation to see if NoCD is the right fit for you and your child. Just go to treatmyocd.com. That is treatmyocd.com, and I'll leave a link in the show notes as well. We also have our doors to the AT Parenting community, my member community, open until Thursday. And so if you are listening to this in real time, the doors close November 20th, 2025. If you're listening to this at any other time in the future, we open our doors about every 3 months, and then we have a wait list in between. Sometimes when that wait list gets really big, we open privately to the wait list. So you can go to atparentingcommunity.com, regardless of what time of year it is, and check that out and see if we're open. If you're listening to this the week of November 17th, we are open, but only until Thursday. So I would love to have you over there. We do amazing things to support parents in depth there. We have weekly live classes on Zoom. We have monthly support group calls on Zoom for the kids, the parents, the teens, 3 different ones for 3 different groups. You have access to my online courses, how to teach kids to crush OCD, how to teach kids to crush anxiety, how to handle difficult behavior, how to pull back accommodations through the SPACE program, over $500 worth of courses you have access to as a member. You have access to me as a member. And so we have a member-only app. Keep it in your pocket, pull it out. You can message me directly. I know that's crazy, right? Message me directly. I will message you back and I will support you. I'll offer you resources or guide you to where you're going. Or if you're having a hard time finding a therapist, I will roll up my sleeves and I'll try to help you as well. So, and there's over 1,000 parents who are willing to help you as well. On our app, you can see where they're located, if they're near you, if they add their location, what age their kids are, what issues they're dealing with, if they've included that in their profile. And so you can reach out to another member and say, hey, we live in the same area. We have kids the same age. Do you want to get together? Or do you want some support? Or can I support you? So super, super cool community that I've created, and it's evolved over the years. Learn more at atparentingcommunity.com. All right, let's get into it. I want to start with what you can't do, because I always like to end with an action and a positive. And so we're going to start with the bad stuff, and then we're going to end with the good stuff. So let's break down first what you can't do, what sometimes parents think they can. So the first one is stopping them from doing compulsions that don't involve you. This is something that parents sometimes miss, not everybody, but some parents will own this journey so much that they almost see their kids as an object that they have to control. So if they're washing their hands, they feel like they physically have to stop them. They misunderstand when we talk about OCD compulsions and parental accommodations. They hear parental accommodations and they think that means I'm accommodating the OCD if I'm allowing it to happen. But our kids have free agency. It's their body, it's their mind, and we don't physically control or stop them from doing compulsions that don't involve us. Because that's annoying, that's frustrating, that's going to ruin trust, and it's not going to help them long-term anyway. So you have to ask yourself, is this involving me? And when I say involving you, that means, are you providing the material, the soap, the toilet paper, the laundry detergent? Are you doing something to complete the OCD loop? Washing your own hands, or following OCD's rules, or answering OCD's questions. If it doesn't involve you in any capacity, you can't stop them from doing it. That's not an effective tool. I also want to mention, I should have mentioned before I started, that I do have a handout for you. I've been making handouts for my episodes for the last maybe 5 of them. And I'm trying to do it every episode. I'm sure there'll be an episode that I'm not going to do a handout for, but this one has a handout. And so if you just go to natashadaniels.com/handouts, you will get access to our website that has all handouts for all the episodes that I'm making handouts for. So you can just go to episode 445 and you can find the outline of everything I'm going to be talking about today. Doing this for you if you are if you are a paper and pencil kind of person, or you like to take notes, but you're doing the dishes or you're running or whatever, calm down. Don't worry about it. I got you. I mean to say calm down. That sounded kind of rude. I got you. And you can just get the handout, natashadaniels.com/handouts. Okay. So that's the first one. The second one is you can't force them to be motivated. This one's I've struggled with a lot of these. It is so hard to watch our kids not be motivated. And this might seem obvious, but you can't force them to be motivated. You can't force them to want to work on the skills. It has to come through either you doing something, and we'll talk about that as we go, or you slowly building up that motivation, or it has to just come intrinsically. We can't force them to be motivated when they're not. The next one, I'm going to go through these rather quickly because I'd rather spend a lot of time telling you what you can do than what you can't do. Okay, the third one is really threatening them isn't really a great thing to do. Now you might be like, well, duh, Natasha, that's kind of obvious. But a lot of us have done it out of frustration. I know I have. And there is a difference between threatening them with something that isn't going to happen versus telling them a consequence that will happen, that objectively will happen. So for example, when I say to my son who has ARFID, which is around restrictive eating, when I say to him, if you go under 100 pounds, you will have to be G-tubed. That's not a threat, that's a reality. And I'm telling him the natural consequence that will happen. Or if you continue to get worse and you can't go to school, you will need to go into residential treatment. That's not a threat. That's just telling them the outcome of what might happen. Threatening might look like, if you continue to wash your hands, you're going to lose all electronics. Or, if you ask me that reassurance question one more time, I'm taking away your iPad. Threatening our kids to not do compulsions doesn't work long term. It may work in the short term, but it ruins trust and communication. The child shuts down. They might sneak compulsions, not feel like you're a safe person to talk to. It doesn't create true progress. Just because I'm resisting a compulsion because you are threatening me doesn't mean that I'm not going to find another way to satisfy OCD in a way that you don't notice. There are a lot of mental compulsions. And so you can't strong arm OCD into silence because OCD has the upper hand. It's in your kid's brain. And so they can do mental compulsions. They could do canceling out compulsions mentally, or mentally checking, or mentally saying something to neutralize a bad thought. They can do a million gazillion things in their brain that is just as bad and grows OCD just as big as washing their hands. And you won't see it and you won't know about it because they're not going to tell you because they don't trust you. So as tempting as it is to threaten because we think, the neural pathways are growing bigger every time they do a compulsion, threatening them isn't the way to move the dial. Okay, the next one is you can't make them make progress. You can't make progress go quicker than they want. This is so annoying to me as a mom who wants things to go fast, and as a therapist who wants their kid to tap into their skills quicker. I can't make that happen because we have to follow their pace, not our pace. I often in the AT parenting community, I'll talk about the metaphor of walking the dog. And, when you get a puppy, you have to teach the puppy that the puppy has to lead. And so every time you're ahead of the puppy, you have to stop and wait for the puppy to lead again. Have you ever tried to walk a puppy? I did not realize how hard it is until I got a puppy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they don't naturally know how to walk on a leash. What the heck? That's something, I wasn't a dog person for a long time. So this was like mind blowing to me that I had to train them to walk. But it's similar with OCD. They need to be the one ahead, not us. We can't be dragging them like a little puppy. And so we have to follow their pace, even if it's a pace that is excruciatingly slow. We have to honor that and meet them where they're at. It doesn't mean that there's not things that we can do. And we're going to talk about that after the break. But it means that we can't force them to do things. We can't strong arm them to do things that they're not willing or able to do in that moment. Okay, the next one. We can't make them tell us every OCD thought that is happening under the surface. One, we might inadvertently reinforce a confessing reassurance compulsion because that's a very common OCD compulsion that our kids have to confess their thoughts. And then it's almost like metaphorically washing them away. Or to seek reassurance. I had this bad thought that I was a bad person because I was going to do X, Y, and Z. Tell me I'm not a bad person. Or I touched this and then I touched my mouth. Tell me that I'm not going to get poisoned. That can look like they're actually processing and talking to you about their OCD, when in reality, it's a compulsion that's involving you in disguise. So we have to be cognizant and aware and educated of what that looks like so that we can spot it and not reinforce it. But also, there are some OCD thoughts in general that our kids are never going to share with us. You'll never know 100% of what OCD is telling your child inside their brain. And even if you think you do, or you say, Natasha, no, my child's so open. They're so communicative. They're so talkative. They're like an open book. I know everything. Honestly, you don't. You don't. Because I have worked with kids for 20 years and there's always something that none of us know. And sometimes it comes out in therapy and sometimes it doesn't, but it's always there. It's an iceberg and you're only seeing the top of the iceberg. And sometimes when that iceberg goes below the water, the parents are like, we're done. We're good. I'm not seeing anything. And you're missing the entire large piece of ice that's under the water. And so we have to recognize that our job, and we'll get to this after the break, all the things that we can do, but our job is to educate our kids and give them skills, because at the end of the day, we will never be able to fully know what they're dealing with. And so we have to be able to give them the tools to do it themselves. What's that expression? I'm going to mess it up. Give someone a fish, they eat for a day. Teach them how to fish, they eat for a lifetime. Something like that. It's similar to this. I probably should have Googled that saying before I went and randomly tried to say it. But I want to give them the skills, and I want to tell them that those are skills that they can apply to any intrusive thought or feeling, any OCD theme, because themes will come and go and they'll shift and they'll morph. They will. And you may not always catch it. But if your child knows that, it will shift and morph, and they know that no matter what, the foundation of how you approach OCD is the same. Those skills are the things that are going to help them, whether you know exactly what is bothering them or not. Now, in the AT parenting community and in my online courses, I do talk about how do you find the core fear and how do we find the OCD theme? Because when we do know the core fear and we are working hand in hand with our kids to craft effective exposures, knowing the core fear can really help, and knowing the OCD theme can really help. But at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge that we may not ever know everything completely. And we don't want to be the OCD police to the point where we're bothering our kids and we're constantly questioning them. And it feels like now we don't have a relationship. We're just constantly the OCD police. And sometimes it can turn into that when you're not getting the full answers and you feel like you have to get everything in order to help them. And so you become this overly nagging parent that shuts your child down. We don't want that. And so we have to pace ourselves with how we ask questions, when we ask questions, how often we ask questions, and when we accept that we're not going to get the answer. Some kids also have very sexually taboo and embarrassing intrusive thoughts. I was going to say if you have a child who's a tween, teen, or older, most kids will eventually have those type of thoughts. But I've even worked with 5 and 6-year-olds that will have a 5 or 6-year-old level taboo thought that is embarrassing to them, and they don't want to share it. And so sometimes when you can't figure out what is ground zero for the contamination, sometimes it's because it's bodily fluid, including semen. Or when they're having an intrusive thought and they won't tell you what it is, sometimes it's because it's sexual in nature or sexually taboo in nature. OCD loves that topic because it's like, you're never going to talk about me, are you? No, because it's too embarrassing. So be aware of that as well. Okay, we've got 2 more to go through, and then we're going to go into what you can do. So the next one is you can't prevent OCD from morphing, shifting, and popping up with new themes. That doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It doesn't mean that therapy's not working. It doesn't mean that your child's not working hard. This is the nature of OCD. OCD, more than any other disorder, shifts and morphs and turns into whack-a-mole more than any other disorder I've ever treated. And that is because it's the very nature of OCD. It's got many different disguises. The OCD themes look vastly different. I could have intrusive thoughts that I'm a bad person. I could have intrusive thoughts I'm going to ruin the environment. I could have intrusive thoughts that someone's poisoning me. I could have intrusive thoughts that there are germs on my hands. I could have intrusive thoughts that this is disgusting and I can't handle the disgust. I could have intrusive thoughts that I may never stop blinking. These are all OCD. I might have intrusive thoughts that I'm going to harm you, harm myself, harm the dog. Sexually taboo thoughts that we already talked about. And it's all OCD, but it can look vastly different, and you can't control that. What I often tell parents and kids that I've worked with and parents in the AT parenting community is that think of OCD as an octopus. A lot of times OCD therapists talk about OCD being an octopus, and they do that on purpose because it's got many tentacles that look different. Different tentacles, but the same beast. And when you're using your skills and you're attacking the octopus in and of itself is getting smaller and smaller. But the tentacle might still be hitting your face, and you may not realize that the beast itself is still getting smaller. And so sometimes OCD goes on the run when you're making progress and you're focusing on one particular theme or one particular intrusive thought. It morphs into something else. Sometimes that's actually a good sign. It means OCD realizes it's not having traction in that area anymore, and it's going to something else. And sometimes it's just something new in the environment triggered a thought or a feeling, and now boom, you've got a new topic That doesn't matter because you're tackling the whole beast. That is why it's important to understand the core fear, and it is helpful to understand OCD themes because, one, you want your child to realize that it doesn't matter what playlist OCD is playing, it's still OCD, and the skills are the same. But two, if I know the core fear, I might be doing exposures that are very specific to the core fear, and I'm tackling multiple OCD themes at once, and I'm getting to the head of that octopus versus the tentacles. You can't always do that because sometimes our kids won't open up and talk and you don't know, but it can be very helpful. Okay, the last one I want to mention in this category is you can't force insight. This is so hard. And I see so many parents in the AT parenting community just wanting to force that insight. Like, how can they not know this is OCD? One, just because they can't verbalize that they know it's OCD doesn't mean they don't have insight. Sometimes, as a defense mechanism, our kids will double down on there's nothing wrong with them. And sometimes that is because if they admit that there is something wrong, they are going to have to do something to fix it. It's easier to just have full denial that there's anything that's wrong, that nothing is bothering them because they're in shutdown and it's too much. Sometimes kids lack insight. If they are on the spectrum, they're more likely to lack insight. Not that they can't have insight, but I've noticed in my community, especially, that when we're dealing with kids who are neurodivergent and are on the spectrum, sometimes the OCD thoughts are not clearly separated from who they are. And it's harder for them to decipher what is OCD versus what's them due to the autism. So sometimes that happens. Sometimes our kids just don't have insight. Sometimes we're doing so many OCD accommodations for them that they're not really hitting their breaking point. And so they feel like, really, what is the big deal? You're doing my laundry 500 times a day and you're sitting where I want you to sit and you're taking your clothes off when you get home from work. And I think we're all doing great because you're over accommodating. So they're not really seeing that it's a problem. So lots of reasons why there is no insight, but you can't force insight. You can't get them to see it before they're ready to see it. You can give them a lot of skills, show them a lot of videos, lead them to a lot of breadcrumbs. That is something you can do, but actually forcing the insight, I wish you could because my life would be so much easier. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we get back, I want to talk about what you can do because there are a lot of things that you can do, even if your child is absolutely not willing to work on OCD at this time. All right, stay tuned. We'll be right back. It's time we put help directly in our kids' hands. Introducing Crushing OCD course for kids and teens.
It was way more helpful than all the other therapy we've ever done because we didn't really know what to do. So we weren't really doing it before. So the course helped to figure out what the exposures are and how to do them.
We're not in therapy and find it really hard to find an ERP trained therapist here. So we're currently with like the public health service, but again, they don't seem to be trained in ERP. It's filled that gap that we don't have that was desperately needed.
This was really well timed for us to use between therapists and to help us get off to a good start with this new practice.
It was easy to use. I was able to do it from my phone or also on the computer.
There's different ages, so there were younger kids, there were teenagers, and so that was really nice too, to have a variety of ages where it wasn't just geared towards younger kids or older kids. It was a nice variety.
It's helpful for our kids to hear it from this third party as opposed to just us saying it.
I really like the offense and defense method. I love working on poking at OCD while it's sleeping. It makes it a little bit easier to do and it's kind of fun. I'm planning on using it to work on my fear of holding or touching batteries and stuff like that.
So it was really helpful and I think a lot of other kids would like it. I thought that I was the only one who had worrying about the weather and stuff. And then there was somebody else on there who worried about the same thing, which was really helpful.
Seems less scary to work on stuff now that I've watched this class and I'm more interested to work on it.
I like trying to do more exposures still and before I wasn't, I just didn't want to do them.
I've worked on some of my bigger compulsions and been successful.
I realised that it was helpful to do the exposures before it was like really, really hard. It's still hard, but it's helpful to know that I need to do them.
Before there would be a lot of battles about it, so it is definitely less loggerheads.
Really, really good course and super helpful.
Definitely would recommend this. It's really easy to follow. It's nice bite-sized videos. I really like the worksheets that go along with it, and I think it's really helpful.
To learn more about this course and register your child or teen, go to atparentingsurvivalschool.com. Welcome back. So we went over what you can't do. You can't stop them. You can't stop their compulsions if they don't involve you. You can't force them to be motivated. You can't threaten them and expect that to work long term or make progress quicker than you want, or make them tell you every OCD thought they're having, or prevent new themes from popping up, or force their insight. That was my quick lowdown of everything we just talked about. But you can do a lot of stuff. Let's talk about it. The first thing is you can absolutely educate yourself. This has a lot more power than you think. And a lot of times parents discount education. And I don't get that, because it is one of the most debilitating disorders. A little bit of OCD in my book is like being a little bit pregnant. It's too much. It's black or white. If you have OCD, I'm concerned and I want to know everything about it. And I want to make sure my child knows everything about it, because I have seen people who have mild OCD within a week have debilitating OCD where they can't even leave their bedroom. It can happen that fast. So I want to know everything about it. So educating yourself so that you know what it looks like. You understand all the different disguises. A lot of times parents get tunnel vision and they're like, I only want to know about moral OCD, or I only want to know about contamination OCD, or they don't even know these words. They'll say things like, I just want to know things about, my child has intrusive thoughts. I just want to know about intrusive thought OCD. Well, that tells me you don't know anything about OCD, because OCD always starts with an intrusive thought or feeling. Every OCD starts with that. Or I need to know about magical thinking OCD. Well, that's a compulsion. That's not a type of OCD. So educate yourself so that when new themes pop up, which they will, you'll be able to spot them. And you'll know what you are doing to inadvertently grow OCD. Because yes, we are normally part of it, especially if they're living under your roof. We are almost always inadvertently growing it in some fashion. So educating yourself, even if your child is not ready to work on it, is key. In fact, what a great time to educate yourself, because you got nothing else to do. I mean, we have a lot to do in life, but if that's the only thing I can do to move the dial, I'm doing it because I want to do everything I possibly can. So the next one is you can spot new themes and issues. When my kids are starting new things, we'll have a discussion. I don't want to be the OCD police, so I have to do it in a very careful way. But because I know what OCD can look like in different ways, when I see my kids doing things that are new, that might be OCD related, we will have a conversation about it. It doesn't mean they'll always be forthcoming. It doesn't even mean that they may realize it's OCD. But I am always watching, not to the point where it's debilitating, but I'm always aware of what my kids are doing through the lens of my regular mom lens and anxiety and OCD. And those are two different lenses because those are different disorders and they look different. But I'm always aware of the potential of, oh, this looks like a new compulsion, or, oh, that's an interesting behavior. Why is that happening? I'm not going to always quiz them on it because you have a finite amount of opportunities to do that before you really annoy your child. And so that's like taking a withdrawal from the bank account. I'm not going to always do that. I might just notice it for a while. I might even test it, move something around and see, do they put it back, or set up a situation and see, does that trigger them? I might test it a little bit. And then if it continues, then we might have a conversation and then we might work on it. But I am the eyes and ears. I've got the front row seat. The therapist doesn't, because it may never come into therapy. They may never bring it up. And so you are at the front line of everything. Okay, the next one is understanding co-occurring disorders and struggles. OCD doesn't live alone. It's got a lot of cousins. And the more you understand the really common co-occurring issues, the better you're able to help your child. And so a lot of our kids have anxiety as well. Anxiety is a different disorder, a different part of the brain, but they often co-occur. So understanding anxiety is a really important thing, and the difference between anxiety and OCD. This is something that we talk a lot about in the AT parenting community. We've done a lot of live classes on that. What is the difference? How do you approach one versus the other? And what do you do when they have both? Because you still have to approach them in different ways. Misophonia, sound rage, getting annoyed by mouth sounds, clicking sounds, water sounds, that actually is a very common co-occurring issue with OCD. Understanding that is very helpful because misophonia is treated differently. Body focused repetitive behaviors, BFRBs, that is behaviors like picking and pulling your hair. Those are very common co-occurring issues with anxiety and OCD, and how you treat BFRBs, the picking and the pulling, is different than anxiety and OCD. And it is not a compulsion, and you don't treat it with exposures. You don't treat either of those with exposures. So learning that is important. It's something that we've had classes on in the AT parenting community. We've had guest experts come in and talk about body-focused repetitive behaviors. I've done courses and classes on these topics because so many people in our community are dealing with that as well, or they don't even know they're dealing with it. And they're like, oh my gosh, I just decided to jump into this class today because I saw that it was happening, and my daughter has that. I didn't know that was a thing. So understanding those things are helpful because those impact our child's overall mental health as well. The next one is learn what you do to feed the OCD. This is key. We play a role. We over accommodate and enable OCD behavior. OCD doesn't just give our child rules, it gives us rules. And when we follow OCD's rules, or we answer OCD's questions, or we provide the reassurance, or we listen to the confessions and we absolve them of whatever behavior OCD says they may or may not have done, we participate. The thing is, you can't just pull those things back without a plan. Because when you do that without a plan, you become inconsistent, you dysregulate your child, you're unpredictable, and you get a huge meltdown response, and you don't know how to handle the response because you didn't proactively plan for it. And so we talk in the community a lot about how do you systematically pull back your enabling of OCD. Enabling OCD is part of this disorder, and everybody does it. But then once you learn that it's really feeding this disorder, you have to learn how to detangle yourself from it, because it didn't happen typically overnight, the accommodations, and you're not going to stop them overnight. And so members of my community get my course, space guide, a space study guide on how to systematically pull back your involvement with OCD. If you're not in the community, you can purchase that in my online school at atparentingsurvivalschool.com. But as members, I'm like, take the space course, you have free access to it, and then learn what are the things that you systematically need to set up and do before you just kind of willy-nilly say, I'm not going to complete that loop. Okay. The next one is you don't have to be an island. Surround yourself with people who have experience and expertise. A hive brain is a powerful brain. And when you have a community of people who have been there, done that, tried that, you save a lot of time. And I am always trying to tap into people who know more than me. I want to be the stupidest person in the room. That's always been my way of living. Is when I went into doing online stuff and I started building courses, I found people who are experts in building courses. And I was like, I want to be the stupidest person in this room. I want to learn, teach me. When I'm doing Instagram, I want to surround myself by Instagram people who will teach me, how do you do a reel? I know it sounds so stupid, but it's part of my world and I need to know it. I don't know, right? When my daughter was diagnosed with celiac, I wanted to be surrounded by people who knew more than me, parents who knew how to navigate celiac. And I learned a ton. I joined Facebook groups and I learned people put colored tape on things that are gluten-free in their house, and they have shelves and they have all these like hacks on how to survive and live with a child who needs a gluten-free diet. That was overwhelming at first, but I surrounded myself by people who knew more than me, who had been doing this longer than me, and I learned quickly. You can do the same thing. Surround yourself with people who have been around and have done this for a while. In the AT parenting community, we've been doing this forever. Even the community itself is over 6 years old. There's people who have been doing this who've been in the community for over 6 years. There are people in the community who have been doing this for decades. I have been doing this for decades. And there's people in the community who are brand new and are being held up and supported by the rest of us, guided and taught and led so that they are saving time. It's really nice to save time. When I was actually talking to my friend and I was going to help her do something online, and I was like, oh my gosh, I wish that somebody did this for me, because I had to create it from scratch and figure out how to do it. And I'm saving you like a year of time. That's what parents can do for anxiety and OCD. So tap into that. Obviously, we have you at the AT Parenting community. We've got your back. The next one is set boundaries for how you'll let OCD grow. So once you realize that you participate in growing OCD, then you start setting boundaries. You're not going to add new things to what OCD demands. It's hard to detangle yourself from what you are currently doing. It is easier, but not easy, to say from now on, I'm not going to add new things. So if OCD has a new rule and says, oh, wait, you can't sit there because I don't want you to sit there. That's a new rule. We're not adding new rules to OCD. This is a communal living area. This is my couch. I know OCD doesn't want me to sit here, but I'm not going to live by OCD's rules. And so starting to learn how to set boundaries for how big you'll let OCD grow in your home is really important. The next one is incentivize your child to push back on OCD. We may not be able to motivate them, intrinsically motivate them, but we can set it up for success. We can offer external reinforcers, gamify it, offer them bravery points, and give them a reason externally to resist OCD. That does a couple of things. One, it makes them move closer to the edge, right? The edge of discomfort that they may not want to walk towards. Two, it motivates them. It motivates them for an external reason, but once they start doing it, that motivation becomes internal eventually, because they're like, whoa, I'm getting my life back. I'm pushing back on OCD, and OCD is a paper dragon. It looked big and huge, but I just crumpled it, and it wasn't that hard. It takes time to build that and to get that confidence going with your child, but offering incentives definitely can move the dial. So that is a really important thing. And the next one, and the last one that I want to talk about for today, is identify where to start with your child. There is always a place to start. So if my child has their heels dug in and they're like, don't even talk to me about OCD, then my first step is, one, I'm going to work on my own education separate from my child. I'm going to get my community and my people for myself to anchor me, to support me, regardless of what I can do for my child. And three, I'm going to just work on my relationship. I'm going to work on trust. I'm going to work on communication, and I'm going to build that so that we can take it one step at a time. The more I understand about OCD, the more I'll be able to see in my child. And once they're ready to talk about it, I'll know the right questions to ask because I've already gotten the education. Maybe they're ready for skills and skill building. So what do you do with that? Do you know where to find a good OCD therapist? Because if you get the wrong one, they can do more harm than good. Or if you've got barriers to treatment, whether you can't find a therapist or your child's not willing to go see a therapist, or financially there's a barrier because therapy is super expensive, can you do the skills yourself? A lot of parents in my community, for lots of different reasons, have barriers to accessing treatment. And so they are DIYing it, and they have access to courses that will walk them through it. They have access to me to guide them. They have access to other parents. And a lot of them are doing this themselves and seeing tremendous progress. If you're on a wait list for 3 months, you don't need to be waiting all that time, letting OCD grow. You want to swoop in and you want to start working on things as soon as you can. So understanding where to go and what your next steps are is really important. There's always a next step. Even if your child is like, I'm not doing any of this, okay, well then I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to find my tribe. I'm going to surround myself with people. I'm going to get my own support because it's exhausting and I need my own support. And I need to fully understand this beast that's dominating my house right now. That's important. So I hope that you found this helpful. I hope that there are some things that you can do. What I like to say is pick 1 or 2 things that you heard from this episode and just take some action steps with that. I just listed a ton of things that you can do, but you are not superhuman. I I know some of us think that we are, but you're not. I'm not. And pick one thing. Pick one thing that you heard today that felt doable, that you're not doing right now, and take that one step. That might be just finding your tribe and joining us at the AT Parenting community. It might be just grabbing a book. It might be deciding that you're going to systematically pull back some sort of accommodating of OCD, or that you're going to Google space and look at what that is. Or you're going to check out atparentingcommunity.com and see what we have for you in our community. Take one action today. Don't overwhelm yourself, because I always say every day is just one step in front of the other and one step towards progress. You're not going to run a marathon in one day. You're not even going to sprint in one day. You're going to take a couple of steps and then you're going to call it a day. At least I do that. And that's how you keep your energy, and that's how you keep going, is you just focus on the next step and the next step. So I hope that you found this helpful. I hope that some of you join us in the AT Parenting community. Don't forget to get the handout for today at natashadaniels.com/handouts. And if you are enjoying my podcast, don't forget to hit a star and rate it or write a review. You know I greatly appreciate it when you write a review. And to show my gratitude, I always like to read one if I see a new one. And I do want to thank PSKI Piskai 2025 for writing longtime listener, first time reviewer. And I appreciate that. If you've been listening for a long time and you haven't written a review, maybe that's your action step today. I'm going to go and help Natasha write a review. It actually helps other parents because they read these and they're like, whoa, this looks like a high value podcast. We don't have a lot of time in our day. And so we don't want to waste time listening to podcasts that are going to be fluff. We want actionable podcasts that are actually going to teach you something and that you're going to leave every episode thinking, okay, I can do that one thing. And that is my hope for my podcast, is that every time you listen to something, there's something you take away from it that you didn't know before, or there's something that it motivates you to do that you didn't know before. I'll never talk about something that just makes us feel hopeless and helpless and then end my show. That's not how I roll. There's always something that we can do or something that I'm trying to say to make you feel empowered. And so they wrote, Natasha is a gem. Since my child developed OCD with PANS when she was 8, Natasha's podcast, classes, books, and support groups have been a roadmap for our family. It's such a gift to just be able to listen whenever and get guidance and validation, especially on the days it seems nobody gets it. Thank you, Natasha. Oh, well, thank you for writing that. I really appreciate that. And that must be somebody who is in my AT Parenting community or has been in my AT Parenting community, because that's the only place you get support groups. And I love supporting the kids. We have an amazing group of kids and teens. Some of them have been with us for years. Sometimes parents are, they've been with us for years and they're only still there because the kids love the support group calls. And so I love that they were in my support group call, or maybe they're still in it. And thank you for taking time to write the review. And maybe if you write a review, talking to you now again, I'll be reading yours next time. So don't forget to find the sparkle in everything you do. And I'll talk to you again next week. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. To get additional support raising a child with anxiety or OCD, visit Natasha's online school of on-demand classes at atparentingsurvivalschool.com.